Chicken Soup for the Soul. The Empowered Woman. My mother said I should be fearless and follow my dreams. If you don't move forward, you're standing still. If you don't try, you'll never know what winning might feel like. So, that's what we'll be looking at today. First, of course, we've got to light our candles. 1, 2, and the one you can't see, which doesn't always like to get lit. The one you can't see. 3. I remember reading Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I mean, it must have been back in their heyday in the 90s, so I would have been 10, 11, 12, something like that. And I think we had like probably 5 of them. And I don't actually even remember how I came across this book. But I thought, they're generally pretty easy reading, feel-good stories, and empowered woman. That sounds pretty good. So I picked this up, and it's one of the books that I read, which is why we're doing it on our Tingledom book club here. So, I mean, I guess there'd probably be some of you who haven't actually read the Chicken Soup for the Soul book. So, Chicken Soup for the Soul, yeah, they're short stories. So you can see it says 101 stories. Most stories are, you can see, 3 pages, 2 pages. Most are like that. There are some that are a little bit longer, but most are fairly short, and they're just generally feel-good stories. So don't look at overly messy issues, not overly complicated issues. Getting a positive spin on things and reading a story that'll make you feel better, basically. Which is why it's called Chicken Soup. It's essentially, if we are emotionally sick or soul sick, then these stories would be the equivalent of chicken soup to help us heal in that way. So, I mean, for me, I was religious when I first was reading them, so I don't think it was as apparent to me. There is a slight religious overtone in a lot of the stories. I don't think all of the authors are religious, but definitely has a little bit more of a slant that way, which I hadn't noticed when I was younger, but I haven't read one of these books for probably 20 years or so. But overall, I'd say it was a good book. It's not necessarily the most memorable book, but it's not really designed to be like that. Trying to think because when you've read 101 stories, they don't necessarily jump out at you, so I'm trying to think what stories. There was a story about a woman going skydiving. She said, she'd stood on the sidelines her whole life, and then her husband was going to go skydiving, and she said, okay, yep, I'll go with you. And he was surprised, because obviously she usually didn't do those sort of things together. But, I mean, I was happy for her that was an empowering experience, but for me, I'm very it's really interesting. I've talked about this with my dad a bit. I have become much more risk-averse. Well, first of all, since I stopped being religious, and since I married my love. And I think there's two things going on with that. Since I've stopped believing in God and in an afterlife, I place a much higher premium on the time that I have and the life that I have, because I don't feel like it's a guarantee that I will have another life after this, or that I will have something to go on. So to me, even if the chances are very small that my chute wouldn't open or anything like that in skydiving, for me it's not a risk that's worth taking. And the second reason is because of my relationship with my love. It is something that is so valuable to me. I feel so lucky to be in the relationship that I am. We adore each other. We spend so much time together. We talk together. We support each other. And there are very few relationships that I've seen that are like this relationship, so I do know it is a rare relationship. And it is something I value and I feel very lucky to have. And to me, it is not worth risking anything. I mean, there are very few things that are worth doing that are worth risking it. And so both of us have actually become much more risk averse. When my dad came down with my nieces to Australia, we went to this aerial adventure park, and it was just like one story above the ground in this first layer, and then they have these other ones, and you have this harness, you have this whole thing. But for me, well, I mean, both of us had the same thought. We're just like, not worth it. We went up on the first level, we kind of went around a bit, and then we're just like, this is not worth it. And because, yeah, you know, you can show me this harness and show me that it works, but I also know that these sort of things do fail, and it is a risk, and it's not a risk I'm worth taking. So, I mean, it's different for us because we both sort of share that value and feel that together. I think if one was pushing the other, we would go potentially differently, but that's kind of the boat that we've gotten in together. And I mean, I'm hoping how that sort of risk-averse attitude will help us survive into our hundreds even. But yeah, I love our relationship. Anyway, so there were a few stories. There were a lot of stories about women, I guess, finding their independence after divorce, which I do think is an important topic. I have been divorced as well. Not that I needed to find independence after that, because my ex-husband did nothing, literally nothing. So I was already fairly independent then, except I was, you know, carrying a weight on my shoulder. Anyway, that's not what it's about. So it was nice though to, you know, read about people getting out of these unhealthy relationships. I did relate to that. So yeah, it's fairly easy reading, and it's feel good, but as I said, there's not necessarily a lot of depth into what's going on. Let's just flip through because I can't really remember. Nothing's sticking out to me. Oh, that was the other thing. So this is related to Dress for Success. So I think the royalties go to Dress for Success, which is a charity which helps women get into suits, I think, for interviews and that sort of thing. there were lots of people talking about going up on stage. Oh, I mean, it makes sense because there were actually quite a few, I mean, it makes sense. There were quite a few writers telling their story about becoming writers. And when you're reading a book, it makes sense that you're probably going to hear the story of writers. But I thought it was an interesting editing choice to choose so many stories about people expressing themselves through writing or starting a blog, starting a magazine, that sort of thing, in the writing venue, just because I thought it made it a bit narrow and less approachable. Just felt like there were so many stories about writing and not representative of other areas. There weren't, more stories about becoming a scientist or becoming a lawyer or becoming, everything else. There were a lot of people that were writers, which obviously people who write are going to write stories. So it makes sense, but saying yes to myself. Oh, I think there was a lady who was always doing all these favors for everybody, and then she went to the hospital and nobody really helped her out. They sounded really like they had just been using her. Cold Watch. Working. Oh, serious work. This was a writer, and she would be playing solitaire as she kind of thought through her writing process, which is something I did relate to. It's just that the creative process doesn't always look like work. Yeah, I find this even with my research, that some of my best thoughts come after I've been doing work, and then I go to take a bath, and it's there that kind of everything will gel. I'm not necessarily thinking about it. It's just my mind is allowed to wander, and so that's when that's when it can come through. Oh, there was another story about I think a woman on Long Island when she had been younger, about maybe 12 or 13, and a man had come up and exposed himself to her, and I don't think she told anybody at the time, and then the next day she saw some kids in the park where he had done this, and she thought that he basically might be coming back up. And so she went in, and then, when she basically saw that it might be happening to other people, she went in and was yelling and calling him out. And so they did actually apprehend him and were able, I think he maybe did get to jail for exposing himself to her. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, so I thought that was a nice story. Just about using your voice and, being a good role model for that at any age we should be trying to do the right thing and, set an example, and that she would do that at such a young age. That was good. But yeah, so that's basically the book. If you enjoy those sort of things, it's, as I said, it's an easy read. The nice little bite-sized chunks, just 101 stories. You could read them while you're on your commute or that sort of thing. And just makes you feel good. So, Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Empowered Woman. I think edited by Amy Newmark. That is it for that one. Now let's see, what are we going to look at next week. First, we gotta blow out our candles. The mystery book. No, we'll turn to the title page. Shoveling fuel for a runaway train. Look forward to delving into